everyone, and welcome to another installment of Essays on Abolition. Hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to Saturday. Since I am scheduled to do a TED Excellence with Weibo Jones tomorrow on Sunday, which is usually the day I don't do TED Excellences, I thought I'd switch things up a little bit and do one of these on a Saturday. Very complicated mathematics, I understand, but hopefully you'll follow along. It's been a day, and things are going on. But I'm not going to talk about those things right now, because we're going to talk about this. There'll be plenty of time to talk about those things for the next 4 years. But before we get to the article, hello to those of you who have decided to join me. Raziel, hello. Brittany Holland, hello. Mike R, hello. Samamnyam Nation, hello. Swirl Blue, hello. Black Belt for Christ, hello. Joshua Wetzel, hello. Crimson Tiger, hoy. So yes, decided to pick an article from the Fuck Reform section of the Essays on Abolition. They have these split up between police, prisons, and then Fuck Reform. I don't believe I've done a Fuck Reform article yet, so we'll cover this one today. And this one is called Reforms Are the Master's Tools. I'm dying to know what that means. And this article comes to us from Derica Purnell. I don't know who she is, but maybe it'll tell us here. No, it doesn't. Okay. So let us begin. The system is built for power, not justice. All right. Thank you, Pinkal, the Driving Ape Man, for the... Is that a shiny kitty cat? I guess. All right. Sure. Thank you, Pinkalo, for the shiny kitty cat. Angela Ariaga, Kiever Dam, Corey Suzuki, hello. All right. Pocket change. That was the difference between a cold bus ride or a freezing walk during Boston's brutal winters. But my client traveled to his weekly group meeting any way that he could with the quarters in his worn brown wallet. We did not discuss what he said in the circle when he went, or what any other man confessed or kept secret. Our conversations were mostly about whether he signed in for attendance. To finish his probation, we had to show the court that he completed the class. The probation officer warned me that my client had violated the terms of probation and would be facing jail time. He would lose his weekly meetings, his part-time fast food job, his corner bunk at a shelter, and more. Completely shocked, I called the nonprofit where my client went for meetings and asked about his attendance. The person who answered explained that my client, in fact, rarely missed a class, but each session had a fee and my client only paid a fraction of the total cost. He owed a balance. Attendance wasn't the issue. Money was. A couple $100. That's about what I spent to get my locks retwisted and styled where I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A semester worth of Uber rides to nowhere. The tab at law firm recruitment lunches. Yet for my client, it was the difference between a bed in a jail and a corner bunk in a shelter. The day of the hearing, I prepared to argue that my client had successfully completed each class and that payment should be an arrangement between him and the nonprofit, not to be used to violate his terms of probation. He's literally homeless, I screamed inside my own throat. Isn't this situation obvious? But the court is not for truth or justice, just power and persuasion. Right before the clerk called the case, my client bustled through the hall beaming and proud that he had made just enough after saving paychecks to cover his debt. He had nothing left except pocket change. My former client was in a diversion program. He could delay or avoid jail by completing court-mandated group counseling classes to assist with what the judge or prosecutor assumed was an emotional problem. This was better than jail, and my law clinic professors wisely trained students to request diversion for our clients, so I did. Diversion is among the quote-unquote best reforms in the criminal legal system, yet it still kept people trapped. My client was not in jail, but he was not free. He risked losing his job and temporary housing for reasons that were beyond his control. For example, he had to avoid police encounters, but that condition does not account for Boston Police Department's disproportionate racial profiling of black men. This is me now cutting in. Diversionary programs are not freedom. They are restrictions. They are a different kind of probation. You have to operate within the boundaries. So you're right. They're not free. They are not in jail and living under restriction, which is what probation is. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure what you expected otherwise. My client was not in jail, but he was not free. Well, yes, that applies to anyone on probation. That's what probation is. He risked losing his job and temporary housing for reasons that were beyond his control. Well, I guess you'll never find out if you could have negotiated with the judge or the court about his debt versus his attendance because he paid his debt. So, and then the Boston Police Department's disproportionate racial profiling of black men. Well, okay, was your client profiled by the Boston Police Department during the course of his diversionary program / probation? Maybe we'll find out. I don't know. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, Kyle. All right. Additionally, even if my client had emotional health challenges, going to jail could exacerbate them. Well, he didn't. So, according to the World Health Organization, incarceration is detrimental to mental health due to, quote, various forms of violence, enforced solitude, or conversely, lack of privacy, lack of meaningful activity, isolation from social networks, insecurity about future prospects, work, relationships, etc., and inadequate mental health services, unquote. Yes, jail and prison or prison is not a nice place to go. It's not a fun place to go. You are restricted from interacting with society because for whatever reason you have shown that you cannot be trusted to interact safely with society. It is the unavoidable downside of incarceration. Now, this is not me saying there aren't issues with mental health treatment in incarceration or that it's a perfect system, but some of those things are patently unavoidable and honestly are probably part of the reason that we have prisons too, because you don't want to go there. You ever see that show Scared Straight, that kind of thing? You ever see those shows where they have like teenagers, at-risk youth taken through prisons and shown exactly what prison life is like? Because there's a myth, there's some kind of street cred to it, or it's some place to go where you become a real man or something like that. And they show, yeah, this place is hell. You don't want to come here. It's kind of the thing. It's not an incentive. It is a disincentive to behave badly in society. Now, should prisons be absolute torture chambers? No. Should they be hell on earth? Not if we can help it. But they are meant to restrict and restrain you from the rest of the world as a punishment. Okay, moving on. Ironically, the shelter where he slept shares much of these same qualities. Rather than ridding society of the oppressive conditions that can cause our anger, the burden of improvement is on individuals under the threat of imprisonment. The burden of improvement is on individuals under the threat of imprisonment. Okay, let's take that statement for a second. If I have committed a crime and I am offered the opportunity to have a diversion program where I am not in prison, but I'm under restriction, I have to show that I have learned my lesson, that I can operate in society under the rules expected of me because I obviously proved already that I could not, then yes, the burden of improvement is on the individual under threat of imprisonment. You're correct. So, okay. Diversion and other reforms, changes that increase the power, scope, and legitimacy of the criminal legal system, sound great. We want to believe that these reforms are gentle or perhaps that a more diverse system will alleviate the suffering of the people who bear the brunt of the badge and the cage. Yet as Maya Chenwar, if I'm saying that correctly, and Victoria Law detail in their book, Prison by Any Other Name, reforms encourage judges and cops and prisons to enter into our most sacred spaces, our homes, therapy sessions, jobs, schools, hospitals, even places of worship. Your shelter manager or employer now surveils your whereabouts. Your landlord dangles an eviction card over your head for new and arbitrary reasons. Your court-mandated therapy group leader determines that you have violated your probation because you are too poor to pay for classes you didn't sign up to attend. Again, if you are under restrictions, if you're on probation but not in prison, you're on probation but you're not in prison. Now, is it possible that there are restrictions that are Byzantine and Kafka traps and that kind of thing in our legal system? Certainly. And I would believe it. But what is the alternative here? I mean, name a specific... Okay, so the fee for the classes you are court mandated to attend. Okay. You can have your probation violated for not paying for the classes you didn't sign up to attend. Well, you didn't sign up to attend them. You were mandated to because it is a showing that you are willing to participate in your own rehabilitation, that you can stick to a schedule, that you can follow the rules put before you, because obviously you proved you couldn't follow the rules of society previously. That's kind of the thing. I'm wondering what the price of these classes are, or if there's absolutely no way she could have negotiated a deal for her client, but it never came up because, good for him, he paid his debt, such as it was. So, all right, well, what's your alternative? If you don't want jail, and diversionary programs are the next best thing to actually having to go to jail, but diversionary programs are too restrictive, how much less restrictive do you want to make them, or what changes do you want to make? I don't know if we'll find out. Let's continue. Counterintuitively, reforms do not make the criminal legal system more just, but obscure its violence more efficiently. Pardon me? Let's try that again. Counterintuitively, reforms do not make the criminal legal system more just, but obscure its violence more efficiently. Why spend money to jail someone when you can charge them hundreds of dollars for wearing an electronic ankle shackle forcing them to stay home? Florida's probation officers collected more than $90 million from people on probation and $11 million worth of forced labor called community service. Yeah. Why spend money to jail someone? Whose money would you be spending? Whose money would you be spending to jail them? How much of that are they paying for themselves, the prisoner? Okay. This level of systemic oppression reminds me of Audre Lorde's popular quote that the master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. For me, the full quote is quite compelling. I'll get to the quote momentarily. Thank you, Lady Gopher, for the Dogcat Fox. We're number one, Dogcat Fox. Thank you. Here's the quote. For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. And this fact is only threatening to those women who still define the master's house as their only source of support. Unquote. This fact is only threatening to those women who still... Okay. While Lorde was originally criticizing white feminists, her assessment can apply here too. Sure, all right. Many people believe that the current legal system is our sole source of support for justice, accountability, and even jobs. Wait, what? Many people believe that the current legal system is our sole source of support for justice, accountability, and even jobs. What do you mean, jobs? This belief is bipartisan. Rural residents in Republican districts protest prison closures to avoid job loss. Okay. In criticizing social justice calls to defund the police, Democratic Mayor Lori Lightfoot explained that Chicago protesters were, quote, eliminating one of the few tools that the city has to create middle-class incomes for Black and brown folks, unquote. And then in parentheses from the author, emphasis mine, parentheses. And the emphasis was on the word tools in that quote. So I'll read it one more time. Lightfoot explained that Chicago protesters were, quote, eliminating one of the few tools that the city has to create middle-class incomes for Black and brown folks, unquote. By defunding the police. Okay. The amorphous, multiracial middle class is managerial, filled with politicians, lawyers, judges, cops, probation officers, prison guards, and nonprofit employees whose job security is predicated on maintaining an unjust system. Okay. Well, what do you propose in solution to this? Because not everyone that you listed is inherently corrupt or inherently acting badly. If there are elements to the process that are unfair or need to be re-examined, then do so. But if reform as a concept is inherently bad, what is your alternative? Moving on. If the criminal legal system is our sole source of support, I don't think that's true, but all right. And I like how she calls it the criminal legal system and not like the justice system or the criminal justice system or anything else, just the criminal legal system. Because we can't have the word justice in there because it's not. Right? If the criminal legal system is our sole source of support, then reform might also be attractive to the ever-growing exploited classes that experience the most injustice, especially if they are Black, Indigenous, immigrant, or have a disability. They likely rely on the criminal legal system mostly out of desperation because their social, economic, and educational supports have been undermined or decimated. For example, a Black teenager in Michigan, once incarcerated for not completing her virtual schoolwork, was originally on probation because she stole a cell phone and bit her mom's finger in a fight over not being allowed to go to a friend's house. Her mom called the police 3 times on her daughter because she did not know where else to find help. I'm going to back up. I'm going to read that one more time for my own edification. For example, a Black teenager in Michigan, once incarcerated for not completing her virtual schoolwork, was originally on probation because she stole a cell phone and bit her mom's finger in a fight over not being allowed to go to a friend's house. Her mom called the police 3 times on her daughter because she did not know where else to find help. So this girl attacked her mother, was put on probation as a result for, I assume, theft and assault. Yeah. And then she didn't finish her schoolwork, probably because that was part of her probation. Okay. That's the system's fault. She was expected to do her schoolwork as part of a criminal probationary diversionary program for having stolen something and assaulted her mother. And that's okay. Thank you, Bacall, the Driving Ape Man. Lawton covered this story 2 weeks ago on MSS News. Did we? I don't remember it. Not off the top of my head anyway. So maybe that's why it just seems so... It's boggled. Seems new. Of course, my mind has been elsewhere the last couple of weeks, so thank you, Piccolo. Even people who police primarily put in prisons... Ooh, I like the alliteration. Let's try that again. Even people who police primarily put in prisons experience the carceral state as a sole source of support. Without jail, they would not have health care, therapy, beds, chances to go to school, or recover from an addiction, all of which should be plentiful, optional, high quality, and available for anyone, anywhere, anyway. Right. Well... I'll just ask how and who is paying for that. But all right. The criminal legal system is like the master's house. Reforms are the master's tools. Sometimes black public defenders will be able to use a tool or two to get their client free, or a black prosecutor or judge will even appear to be in charge of the house, which was true in my client's case. So if there is a black prosecutor or a black judge, they are house something. Is that what you're saying? Because they're black and working within the criminal legal system. Be in charge of the house. I know. I'm filling in the blanks here. But it's very difficult not to, given our author's rhetoric. All right. But this will never bring about genuine change. Reforms do not solve the root causes of harm, individual or institutional. The master's house is on fire, and the more that we try to reform, diversify, and resource it, the more people will suffer as it collapses. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was right to fear, as he once told Harry Belafonte, that he was integrating black people into a burning house. Now, there wasn't a quote around that, so I'll just have to take your word for it. Unlike reform, abolition is about dismantling oppressive systems and expanding or creating sources of support for people like my former client, for Grace and her mother, for me and you. Grace and her mother. I'm assuming that was the cell phone girl. Abolition might feel threatening because it upends the status quo and delusive comforts of cops and cages. Try that one again. Abolition might feel threatening because it upends the status quo and delusive comforts of cops and cages. Fighting for a society where black people and our oppressed siblings can thrive is not, quote unquote, normal in a country built on genocide, theft, slavery, patriarchy, homophobia, xenophobia, ableism, and militarism. The fight is forged. What abolitionists dream and build is more promising than diversifying police departments or expanding probation. Abolition creates more just societies where we do not need masters' houses, masters' tools, or masters at all. In a more just world, my client's pocket change could be the difference between a walk or a train. Wait, let me try that again. Sorry. In a more just world, my client's pocket change could be the difference between a walk or train fare to his favorite restaurant. Perhaps he could have a corner apartment instead of a corner shelter bunk, and he would feel overwhelmed because he had too many green jobs or too many therapists or too many schools to choose from. He wouldn't have run in the halls to greet me about paying off his balance for freedom. His freedom would be free. The end. I added the end. It's not actually there, but just to put a pin in it. Okay. And I know that in relation to all the other articles, this should not surprise me by now, but each of these is written, I believe, by a different person or persons. And yet we come to the same problem at the end of each. I have read, in general, the complaints and or problems cited in the current system, however you want to label it. And yet by the end of this, I read nothing that informs me of an alternative or a solution or a pathway to an alternative or a solution. Just abolish prisons, abolish police, abolish the criminal justice system, because it's obviously not justice, so it's criminal legal system. And then what? And then what? I mean, your client wasn't being given restrictions because he's being treated unfairly. He's not in prison, and he's being given an opportunity to show that he can operate within the bounds of society by having more restrictive artificial rules put on him because his previous behavior tended to indicate he couldn't operate under the rules or expectations of society. Now, again, I don't know, and apparently neither does our author, if she could have negotiated a deal regarding his couple $100 debt, but his excellent attendance. A good lawyer would probably have brought in the person running the meetings to testify that he made it to all of the meetings. It was never a matter of attendance. It was a matter of income by itself. And he obviously had intentions to pay because he had the money to pay. And if he hadn't paid his debt in the past, I'd be surprised if he came up short and just had never done so previous. Anyway, was that an unfair restriction? I don't know. It wasn't put to the test in the example given, so I can't say. But if that was the one example that she would want to have reformed, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. If every other box on the check box or the check list is taken up, attended all the meetings, got a job, stayed here, did this, and the only mark off is that he's a couple $100 behind on his meeting fees that he's been attending regularly, I think you could probably argue that this guy has shown that he's willing to act within the court's mandate. But now I'm getting very technical. I'm getting very specific because that's the only specificity our author provided. But that would be a reform. If it said, thou shalt not pass this diversionary program unless all debts are paid and you shall go to jail, effectively making debtors' prisons again, which is obviously something we wouldn't want, but there's an argument to be made that cash bail does that, and that's a whole other subject. Okay, I might be on board. But that would be a change in policy or a prerogative given to the judge. That'd be a reform. But you're not talking about reform, you're talking about abolition, defunding the police, getting rid of prisons. You say that the only reason people care about the police force or prisons is because it maintains people's jobs or healthcare and so on, that it's all about the people running the things with no care for the people inside of the things, and that's why. It's not about, I don't know, keeping people who are dangerous to the rest of us away from the rest of us and giving people the opportunity, sometimes the very difficult opportunity, of having to watch over some people like that. People who put their lives and safety on the line to protect the rest of us from the worst of us. And those people are being greedy, it sounds like. Even if they are, by themselves, not white. They are apparently just running the house for the master. There's a term for that, a term our author did not use, and which I would be not willing to use in public, obviously, but is a referential term that I see very often. But that's who our author thinks black judges and black police officers and black prosecutors are, without actually saying it, because she's being polite, I guess. Okay. Well, that is what I got, guys. I'll take a couple minutes if you have any questions, comments of your own, and then I'll wrap this up. Let's see. Keeverdam, I also love how they put black people and disabled people in the same category. Right, like your skin color is a disability, I guess. That's interesting. Let's see. You're a ridiculous lunatic. Freedom is not free. That is also a very famous quote. I think it was Benjamin Franklin. Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on the quote. Let's see. Cracked. Maybe the mayor should reduce municipal codes that inhibit business. I have very little information about what goes on in Chicago, aside from the crime statistics I see constantly and the face of Lori Lightfoot. Those are the two things that are burned into my mind when I think about Chicago, which is not a good thing. A scanner daftly, the 1% and middle class, of course, they have unlimited funds and patience. Yeah, I guess they just, again, all of this sounds like there's maybe a point there. And yet every time we get to the end of these articles, I never get a resolution. What do you want to see changed? What would replace these systems? What do you do with the next Dylan Roof? What is the alternative there? Should we get rid of diversionary programs because they're possibly flawed and instead just send everybody back to jail? No, we have to abolish prisons. Well, okay, if you abolish prisons, where do you put Ted Bundy? Where do you put the serial rapist? What do you do with the worst among us? I am totally open, and I've said this before on many TEDx's about restorative justice and so on. I'm totally open to saying, here's the line. Like third-degree misdemeanors and down, right? These crimes and down and lower, depending on circumstances, are qualified to be considered for diversionary programs rather than prison right off the bat. Now, and maybe that's a wrong way to go. I don't know, but I would be willing to listen to an argument if somebody said restorative justice programs, avoiding prison, works or should be considered for crimes of this level and lower as a first step rather than as a secondary step. Okay, you got my attention. If somebody said that as a restorative justice proposal, you got my attention. Might not agree with it, would want to know the details, but abolishing prisons completely, doing away with police departments, doing away with prisons, doing away with the legal system, and on and on. That is a much tougher sell. And the problem is, I'm being pitched the idea, but I'm not being pitched the product. All right? Like, here's the problem, but I don't have a solution to offer you. It's constantly a very weak sales pitch. But that is all I'm going to say for that one, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any other questions, comments, or observations, I appreciate you put in the comments section after this. I try to read all the comments that I see. I don't always respond to all of them, but I do read them. If you'd like to hear more from me, or Satsu 2 Cents, or the Ranting Monkey, you can find all three of us tonight on the Ranting Monkeys channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for The Lords of the Night, where we will talk about the news of the day, news stories that you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Anything else I want to shill while I'm here? Oh, I have a merchandise store. If you'd like a TED Excellence t-shirt or a Pepperjack t-shirt or a Scribelite coffee mug, those are very popular. You can find those in the link below. And otherwise, yeah. If you happen to be interested in more of these essays on abolition readings and commentaries, I have a playlist on my channel, Essays on Abolition. This is part 5, if the title didn't already give that away. So I'll continue to do these. There's quite a collection. I only get access to 2 or 3 of them per month or whatever. So maybe next weekend. And also remember, tomorrow, Sunday, on November 8th, at a time not yet determined, I got to figure that out with Weibo Jones, I will be doing a TED Excellence with Weibo Jones, strangely enough, covering the criminal justice system. So looking forward to that. Everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your Saturday. I hope you are all safe and well. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your participation. Thank you so much for your generosity. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.